Hey everyone, welcome back to another OSCP journey video. You'll see today we have like a new background thing going on. I've recently updated to the latest Kali 2018.1 release. This isn't the default look or anything like that, so you wouldn't really be able to tell. But I decided to do like a clean wipe of my system. I was having some issues with utilities like Armitage and whatnot. And a clean wipe fixed all those problems, and so I'm all up to date and good to go. Decided to go with a new theme along with that. I think I got like a cyan terminal name thing as well going on, that just trying a new look and feel. But yeah, all that aside, this is kind of an update video along with, this is going to be kind of a mixture of a tutorial and practice for myself. Kind of like a couple of the other videos have been, but the focus here, I'm looking at post-exploitation and also taking and reading metasploit modules and rewriting them so they're usable as OSCP content. We'll get into that in a minute. I have a like small tangent on that. But I wanted to address, I've had a couple comments and talked back and forth with some of the videos, getting some good feedback. I really appreciate that. A couple people are really commenting on like my Eternal Blue video, and I'm getting some questions about compatibility with like Windows 10 stuff, and I think technically I've addressed this as technically there is a build of Windows 10 that's compatible, and I'm kind of testing that. I'm also planning to test a couple of other niche issues that you guys have experienced when trying the exploit out. I'll be honest, it's going to be a while before I get to that. That requires some actual research and debugging. I'll get to it as soon as I can, but don't expect a video on that anytime soon. I'm actually in my last semester of college, so even my OSCP journey videos, as you've already noticed, are going to be few and far between for the next couple months. So don't expect really any videos, much less targeted videos at stuff that maybe we've discussed in comments. I've got it on the back burner. You're not forgotten. Just wanted to let you know, don't expect that anytime soon. If you can figure it out on your own, good job, you tried harder. But that's all there's to say about that. Let's talk about what we're doing today. So today, if you can't guess by the video title, we're going to manually enable an RDP service in Windows so that we can remote desktop into it. This is useful for a number of reasons. First off, frankly, the Windows command line just kind of sucks. It doesn't matter how good you are at it; it's just not good. That's my opinion, of course, but I believe that's a popular opinion. I do consider myself pretty decent with the Windows command line. I'm not amazing or anything, but I know my way around and I can get stuff done. Also, I'm pretty good with my Google foo there. So I don't think I would ever have an issue if I was locked in tight to a Windows command line, especially if I had PowerShell access. PowerShell makes everything better. But sometimes it's nice to just be able to RDP in and have a session. Also, if you're able to do that, you're establishing you're establishing further access in the system. You're really rooting yourself in and maintaining access to the system. You have more than one way in. And that's kind of the point of this. This is a post-exploitation technique that I am kind of practicing here. So I already know how to do this. This isn't going to be a standard like me solving something video. This is not really a tutorial, but it is a tutorial. What I'm doing is I'm showing how I dissect already written exploitation code and converting it into something that I can understand better. So I'm kind of showing how I do that. Specifically, where that kind of idea comes into play is with metasploit modules, because 9 times out of 10, if I find public exploit code, the only reason I really have to modify it if it's not suiting my needs. Otherwise, I can use it. It's a valid OSCP technique to do. You can use that public exploit code. That's actually what it's for. It's great. It's a fantastic resource for the OSCP, as we've already seen, and highly encouraged. But metasploit, of course, the usage is very limited. In fact, I think I've had a back and forth comment with somebody who made a remark about how technically I am still using metasploit whenever I do things like the Eternal Blue exploit and stuff like that. And I think I've made it pretty clear that while that's true, I am using the metasploit framework. I'm not actually using any of the modules to exploit anything. I'm not using metasploit to perform any kind of exploitation. I am using MSF Venom, which is a separate utility, to generate shellcode. And I always make sure I'm not using Meterpreter, because that's what the distinction is, because Meterpreter gives you the post-exploitation modules, and quite frankly it gives you a more stable shell most of the time. But the only thing we're ever using Metasploit for is the multi-handler. Now, you could just as easily throw up a netcat listener or even a stage listener. There's plenty of like reverse shell listener like scripts and stuff to help assist with that, so you don't have to use the multi-handler, but you're allowed to use it on the OSCP, so why wouldn't you? It really does make things a lot easier. So while if you're thinking that when you're watching my videos, you are correct. I technically am using Metasploit. Ooh, I'm not actually breaking any rules of the OSCP, which is the point of the journey. That's the scope, is everything's scoped to where it's fair game for the OSCP. Because really, Metasploit in the real world is a super useful utility, and there's no reason you really shouldn't use it unless you just don't know what you're doing. But the goal of the OSCP is to really demonstrate that you manually understand how everything's working. You're not just pointing Metasploit payloads at stuff and saying, okay, pwn. You really understand the concepts that are going on, the network stuff and all that kind of stuff. Kind of side tangent there, but what's really great about Metasploit is the code's already written. This is public exploit code. These modules already have the logic of how to exploit these vulnerabilities. You just got to know how to read them. And a prime example of that here is the Windows RDP post-exploitation module. So this is the enable RDP module, formerly Git GUI, which is deprecated. They both work though, but they do the same thing. They turn on RDP, create you a user, and then you can go log in. I believe Armitage also has a built-in thing that's like Git remote desktop, and it does like a weird reverse local VNC thing that's honestly a lot slower, so I recommend doing this instead. But the point here is that this post-exploitation module is already written. I can't use this on the OSCP, but I can read this and see how it's activating, how it's working, how it's exploiting whatever it is. In this case, it's not really an exploit, it's just enabling a service on Windows when you break it down. But you could really see what's going on and rewrite your modules in such a way, and rewrite the modules in such a way where it's your own custom script. You can rewrite it in any language you want. You just need to know how to read this and get a fundamental understanding of what's going on. And so that's kind of what I am practicing here today. I kind of dove headfirst into this and was like, okay, well, what's it doing? How can I replicate this on my end so I can actually enable RDP once I've got a command shell? And I used this in a combination with some Googling, and I came up with some results. But we're going to step through the script and kind of explain what's going on. So this stuff up here is just some metadata about what the service is. So you get your options and stuff that you'd supply it if you were in Metasploit and all that kind of stuff. What's cool about this, I haven't really implemented this in my, it's not really a script, but in my notes to go back and clean up after yourself. But what's cool about this one is once you're done, it'll clean itself up. So it'll remove the user you made, it'll turn off all the services and all that kind of stuff, and be like, you were never there, which is pretty awesome. I'm not sure how in-depth it goes. It looks like it does go back and rewrite all the registry keys and stuff. However, if there's logging enabled all the system, just keep that in mind because you may have some events logged. So it's probably not perfect, but it is pretty good. So what happens here is it's doing some checks. So of course, if you're not admin or you just don't have privileges to turn on RDP, it's gonna say, hey, we couldn't turn on the remote desktop service, or hey, we weren't able to create you a user account. And it also does some cool port forwarding stuff. So if you set that up, so if you wanted to forward on a different local port, you can. Then we're not really going to look at that. Here's what we're really going to look at. So we're enabling the remote desktop service. So one of the first things we want to do that's not in here is actually enable the service. And I believe setting this registry key does it, but there's also just a term service command that you can run. But this particular one is going to allow incoming terminal service connections, which is important. So there's two firewall settings that we have to modify here before we can connect to the remote desktop. The first one is on the local port, and the second one is on the external port to allow, it's not really external, but it's the service itself. So you have like a firewall rule and a service rule that says, okay, firewall, open this port, service, allow incoming connections on the port. So this one's allowing those connections in, Well, if we scroll down a little bit further, we're actually starting term services, which is the remote desktop. And then we will open the port on the firewall. So that's what's happening here. These are all just Windows shell commands, and you just execute them. So see, this is just command exec, and then it goes. So that's what's going on here. We wrote a registry key to enable incoming connections. We started the service. We made sure the firewall port was open and accepting, and then here we're making a user to be able to access service. And once we made a user, we are setting the here it does some extra cool stuff where it hides your user from the logon screen. I'm not going to do that in this video, but this is really simple to do, which is awesome for kind of keeping yourself low key. Somewhere in here, I think I skipped over it, we are adding ourselves to the correct group because you have to be part of the remote desktop services group in order for this to work. Here it is. So it adds the user to the remote desktop users group. It actually goes and finds it, but we're gonna stick with the defaults for here. And then you're good to go. You can log in through RDP after you're successfully added to the remote desktop users group. So you see, I know I just kind of like blazed through that and explained all the key points because I knew where everything was, but basically all I did was open up this module and said, hey, what's going on? What are all of these registry keys things? And I went and I Googled and cross-referenced and said, okay, well, it says RDP is disabled, we're enabling it, so obviously that's registry key set val data, that's important, and it does that. So I kind of picked out all the commands and stuff it's executing on the victim machine, and put it together in my own little notes. And that looks kind of like this. So if we go here, I've got my handy dandy scripts folder, enable Windows RDP. So these are my notes about the RDP service. So I've also cross-referenced with a couple other things. So this is a clearer breakdown of what's going on. So the first thing I would do is start the term services. The next thing I want to do, you can do the manual key or the automatic key. The metasploit module does the automatic key, so that's kind of what I stick with. But this adds the automatic startup, so term services automatically starts up. Then you can kind of ignore the rest of these. These are just notes. The next step is then to add a user, add that user to the group, open the firewall, and allow all the connections. So that's really what I just explained from the metasploit modules, but these are broken down into the actual Windows commands. So what I'm going to do today to demonstrate this to you guys is I'm going to pwn a Windows 7 box using my Eternal Blue exploit kind of thing. It's not really I don't want to mislead anybody. That's not my exploit code. I did not write that exploit code. I just put it together in a nice package. Don't credit me with the exploit code. I want to make that very clear. But I am going to use kind of like my little script setup to help show how easy it is to pwn with that in the context of this, and then we're going to do the post-exploitation and enable RDP. So that's the goal of this. I want to show you guys kind of some progress of where I'm at in terms of my OSCP journey, because like I said, I am in school and it's hard to make these videos, and it's also hard to really study for the OSCP and stuff like that. But I am still making progress as I go. I never give up. I'm always trying harder, and this is kind of where I'm at, and what I'm working on at the moment is tricks, little tips and tricks like this that I know are going to go a long way. So we're going to start here with a new TMUX session. We're going to call it Windows Hacks. We're going to call this one, this is going to be our RDP. Make a new window, we'll call this one our listener. Make a new window, and this one we're going to call our pwn tab. So in our pwn tab, we're going to go to our documents, scripts, AutoBlue, and we are going to go to our shellcode folder, and I'm going to run my shell prep.sh script to help us out with compiling, or yeah, to help us out with running this machine. You'll notice we're not really going to do a lot of recon in this one. I will do like the exploit checker thing, but I'm not going to do much more recon. I already know what my target machine is. This isn't like a full puzzle video or anything like that, so that's why I'm kind of skipping over those steps and going straight to the point. So yes, we want to help. We want to generate the shell with innocent venom. I just know my local IP. It's been pretty consistent lately. 338, and we want a regular command shell because we are metasploit friendly, or OSCP friendly, not metasploit friendly. Alright, shellcode is merged. Woohoo! We're gonna go up a directory, and we're gonna go over to our listener stat tab and go into scripts, auto blue, and start our listener. So of course we're on 168.2.186, 337, 1338, regular command shell, and it's going to start up those listeners. And then we can get ready to exploit our target system. So we're going to run internal blue checker first against our target. Make sure it's vulnerable. So this is our target. So Windows 7 Professional 7601 Service Pack 1. It is not patched. So we have a good shot here. So exploit7.py 2.168.2.353 shellcode, let's see, all.bin. This is the defaults that my script set up. We're going to make sure our listener is up before we continue further. It is. Let's pwn it. Alright, looks like the exploit ran, and we have a session. So sessions-i, we can see our sessions, and we can connect to it, and here we are. So cool, we are on the box, we are admin, but we're not real good at the Windows command line. That's right, we're not. So let's go get ourselves a nice pretty GUI. So the first thing we want to do is start the term services, and those are started successfully. Next thing we want to do is set up those registry keys. That's good to go. I've only done this like 3 times now, so if something breaks, then this video isn't going to go as smoothly as I'd hope. So next command is the net user command. This is how you add users in the command line. I'm going to use my nifty handle here. Follow at in-game on Twitter. Woo, plug. Password, we're going to be that scrub as our password, because we're a scrub and we use the Windows GUIs. And we're going to add our user. Alright, then we need to add our user to the local group. So net local group. The local group we need to add to, by default, on Windows, the remote desktop users is remote desktop users. That is the group, that is what it's aliased as. Sometimes, you may have aliased as something different, or maybe you don't want people in the remote desktop users group to be able to access that as a security measure. Say you want only admins on the system to ever access remote desktop, then you may have restricted this default group. So keep in mind with that, that may be something different. You'll have to do some further hunting around. I have looked into that. I'm not really concerned with it at the moment. If it happens, that's some more Googling I can do. I can also just look at how the metasploit module is handling that as well. It's not really that big of a hurdle, but just so you know, by default this is what it is, and 9 times out of 10 this will probably work. So we're adding our user to this group. So now we have permissions to the remote desktop users. Now we need to open up the port on the firewall. So SH firewall set service type remote desktop enabled, and we're good to go there. And the last thing we want to do is make sure we're allowing those incoming connections. And we're done. If everything worked out great, we'll be able to RDP into the system. So how do we RDP into the system? Well, if you're on Kali, you have a nifty tool called RDesktop that does a great job of it. So we're going to use it. So our target is 53. The user we made is end game. And you could also specify the password with -p. I forgot my password already. It was dat scrub, because I'm a scrub. But you can do that, or you can do a -- or nothing, and it will just open up the RDP. And it looks like we successfully did enable RDP. And from here we could log in as other users, or we've specified ourselves, of course, and we can just type in a password here. Doesn't really matter. I just kind of like to do this to make sure I know the RDP is actually working. And then just type in my password. Oops, wrong password. And it's going to take a minute. This usually takes a second to log you in and set you up. But once it's logged in, we'll have a full Windows desktop that we can use. And of course, I think with our desktop, if you want like a full screen or something like that, there's some arguments you can pass to it. But for our purposes, this is good, plenty good enough. So that's really it. It's really not that hard to do stuff like this. You know, different post-exploitation modules will require different depth and different checks and balances that you have to deal with. But turning on services and stuff like that usually isn't hard. You just gotta know what to turn on, and especially in Windows with the command line. That's why we're doing this. You saw all those registry key things. There's no way I could rattle those off the top of my head, except for maybe like the server starting or the net user add. But there you go. We have our Windows desktop on our victim machine. We can poke around here. We are admin, so I can open up the computer and I can go check out our users, and we got the PwnMe user, which I believe is the other admin. I don't have permission. Want to bet? I definitely don't have permission. Hold up. I don't know the password. I thought I was admin. Oh man, that's interesting. I'm sure there's a way around that. Of course, I am admin, so I could just change his password and get in if I really wanted to. I think it is a really easy password for me to brute force to. I can't remember. I have this machine set up in my lab. This is one of my lab VMs. But yeah, that's enough for there. I'm really just kind of messing around at this point. So that's kind of where I'm at on my journey so far. I'll pwn some more boxes later. Yeah, hope you enjoyed this. Thanks for watching.
Another play in the game where I'm killing these scores on this mic for a while.